the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin True, and today Sophie Benson is back here on the Rock Fight. Sophie is a UK-based environmental journalist, and it's been a long time since you've been on the show, but it's been so long, in fact, we were just talking about it, that you've written a book. So welcome back, Sophie.
Thanks so much. I'm glad to be back. I've got plenty of ammunition for today.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the fashion world or any version of the apparel world has slowed down in giving us things to talk about when it comes to environmental topics or sustainability.
No, definitely not. I mean, one day I would like to come on and just say it's all fixed, but it's not happening.
We're just wearing burlap sacks. It's like, that's it, guys. We figured it out.
I won't be in burlap, just saying. My version will be more stylish.
I follow you on social media, and I see what you are able to do with secondhand and your sewing machine. So if we all came down to like space age style, like Mylar suits or whatever, you will still look better than the rest of us, because I know that you'll make it look good.
I'll take that. Okay, deal.
So you're here to give us some, context around environmental topics happening in the outdoor and fashion space. So let's kind of get into it. Since the last time we spoke, there's been a little bit of a not surge, but definitely some spikes in the circularity conversation in the outdoor space, or brands like Houdini and Smartwool and Nemo. And Nemo's an equipment brand, but on the apparel front, Houdini and Smartwool, they've kind of been in the outdoor industry news for promoting circular options. I feel like circularity is almost been more of an insider's term, probably mostly because a lot of brands don't want to talk about it because I know it's a really hard topic to tackle. But when I see that, when I kind of see these things kind of break through, or even if it's just getting mentioned in a press release, and you're like, oh, it's happening. Somebody said circularity or circular options, or even if they don't use the word circular, we have a take back option, right, for when you're done with this. It's just it's encouraging. So just kind of speaking as a whole, and I know you usually address the broader fashion market, but is circularity kind of on the rise? Are you hearing more of that phrase in the apparel space?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think just the language has shifted, definitely from sustainability being the main word to people talking about circularity. And I mean, yesterday I was on a BBC World Service podcast talking about circularity, and that covers everything. So I think that shows that there's like a global audience appetite for the topic. And it's just, is it becoming a bit of a buzzword maybe, but definitely it's in the conversation more.
It's incredible. Like, so you're on kind of a larger kind of network platform, and that is something that is coming up frequently now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, people are looking for explainers of it. They kind of want to know what it is. Is it the same thing as a circular economy? What does it even mean? How does it change things? So the fact that people even want to know what circularity actually looks like, I think is a good thing. Right.
Yeah, I just, the idea of like brands wanting to keep their products out of a landfill and kind of saying that on the nose. And I think we talked about the last time we were here that until there is just kind of across-the-board legislation kind of requiring brands to do certain things, and we're sort of in their hands, so just seeing that conversation. And again, I think we talked about this also when you were here last time about, I just look at the outdoor industry as needing to lead on this because there's a lot of practicality into the products they produce. And to say, hey, we will take it back. We will repurpose this for you because it's kind of part of our mission, I think is a crucial element to just the branding of it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there has to be that level of responsibility. And I think that's been part of the problem for so long. It's like brands will just put something out into the ether and like their responsibility just stopped at the point of sale. And now, there's definitely a start of an acceptance of responsibility, but whether we're actually really seeing that kind of come to fruition holistically and on the level that we need to see it, I don't think so. But there is tangible, undeniable evidence that clothes, whether it's outdoor gear or fashion, whatever it is going to landfill. So you kind of can't not talk about it in some way and tackle it in some way.
Are there any brands you want to highlight that kind of come to mind that you think are doing a good job with it right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think brands are doing it in different ways. So, I think it's really good to see brands offering repair, for example, and that's happening like in the high street. I really like to see that. There's a great brand called Colleen Estrada who worked with secondhand garments that had been sent to the global south in Ghana, and they kind of worked them into their collections, which I really like. So, I think some brands are out there doing the right thing, like partnering with repair platforms, using dead stock and recycled fabrics. That's great. But I don't know, and I feel like I'm always on here, and I'm like the cynical voice, and I'm like,
it's still pretty cynical out there, so go for it. It's okay.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see the start of it, but at the same time, there's, compared to the volume of products that are in landfill, I don't know if the response is really, up to the level. So when I was kind of looking into this topic and okay, let's see who said what, I came across a really interesting interview with Adidas, actually, who I think, they kind of, they sort of tread the line between outdoor and fashion, I would say. So I think we both probably have a handle on them. And it was 2019 that they said on the record, we can make a shoe from as many recycled materials as possible, but if we don't recover it from the consumer, so it doesn't end up in landfill or the ocean, we haven't done our job properly. And that sounds great. That sounds like responsibility. They're even talking about landfill, they're admitting that. But then if you fast forward to the 23rd of June last year, and you look at the All Foundation's Instagram. The All Foundation are based out of Cantonmanto Market in Ghana, which receives literally tons of secondhand waste from the global north. Adidas claimed the number one spot for which brand's products showed up most in their beach cleanup. So not even just in stock that's been sold, just on the beach becoming waste. So I think there's a chasm between what people are saying and what they sort of recognize that they need to do and what they're actually doing. And they're producing, I think, 482 million units per year-ish. That's enormous. So the kind of end of the cycle, collecting and sort of trying to close the loop is great, but we also have to turn off the tap. We can't just mop up the spill. We have to turn off the tap in the beginning as well.
And this goes back to there needs to be some rules put into place probably to really make real headway here. I guess the good that some of these things do and some of these brands, at least, even if they make the statement, if it's, we've said before that the consumers, you can't put the pressure on consumers to solve this because they're not looking into this stuff kind of proactively, right? It's, and we talked about it before, and you see the organic sticker on an apple, oh, okay, organic, good. It's harder to do that on clothing.
Totally.
So if you can get it in the vernacular and people start to understand what it is, then maybe that creates some consumer pressure. But to your point, we were talking about just the scale of stuff being made, which also says that there's probably plenty to take back and make new things out of it. But without it, and everybody's still operating in a silo. That was the one kind of criticism I had even for Houdini, who, even more so than Patagonia, is I think easily the best example in the outdoor space of how they do things and at least their approach.
Yeah.
But, their stores and their secondhand stores and their secondhand websites, it's all Houdini stuff. There are, we had Gear Trade worked with our podcast, and that's a retailer. REI is starting to do it. But mostly the brands are it feels a little box checky, kind of oh, we have secondhand on our website now, so we're good. It's well, it's actually, it would probably be better if we had one communal spot where we could all shop for this, but that's not in the interest of the brand to do stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
It is a little difficult to kind of, there's still a much larger thing to kind of tackle here.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'd just really like to see it kind of, the idea of circularity sort of being embraced more widely along the business model and the product design. And I'm not trying, I think, taking these first steps is really important. The fact that we're talking about circularity is fantastic. So I'm not trying to say this isn't good enough, this isn't a good step forwards. But imagine if more brands were talking about, okay, well, we're going to make all of, this product out of a monomaterial, or we're investing in different type of manufacturing so that it's really easy to take apart at the end of its life so we can remanufacture it into a new garment. So again, it kind of feels like everything's sort of coming at the end of the life cycle, but I want to see people thinking about circularity right from the start, right from the design phase.
Yeah, you're conceiving of the product, then it's okay, great, this is going to be an awesome jacket. What do people do when they're done with it? What's the process? It's another part of the brief, right, of when you're developing something new. Is there, and I don't know, this is kind of me spitballing it based off of what I've been thinking about what you're talking is there any sort of movement at the factory level to start thinking about solving problems for this? Because if you think about, if the factories start offering this, the brands, I'm sure, would hop on board right away, right? And it's just is it in their interest to help develop that infrastructure?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, currently, at the scales that we're working at, probably not. Because if you think about manufacturing in the linear economy and manufacturing from virgin materials, that's so efficient. It's so quick.
Right.
And if you think
And
about
they operate on such like a razor thin, like, I'm sure they're not even making much money at all, right? It's like, that's why the worker conditions often suck and all those kinds of things, right?
Exactly, 100%. So everything, like you say, is like razor sharp margins. Everything is engineered to be, down to the second. And then if you look at something like remanufacturing, you have to do that on an individual basis. Like, how do you productionize that? That's really difficult, because if you're getting back, like, even if you're getting back 100 garments, let's say, there could be 6 different sizes in there could be 20 different styles. It's not as efficient, so it's kind of really hard to offer that, I would say. I mean, definitely are seeing it on some level. So, for instance, here in the UK, there's a brand called T-Mill, and they have started a really great program this year called Thread Not Dead, and basically they will take back any 100% cotton garment from any brand, because they have that circular infrastructure to recycle it, shred it back into the fibre and turn it back into cotton garments. So that's fantastic. So I'm not saying that it's not happening, but at the minute, like you say, like, is it worth it on that kind of scale? But it is happening in other industries. So like Renault, the car manufacturer, like, they have started a remanufacturing factory in France, I think it is. So I think sometimes with these kind of things, kind of tech can be sort of ahead of the game in terms of like production and that side of things. So it's interesting seeing it happen in other industries, and I just wonder if someone will pioneer kind of streamlining it within fashion. I was speaking to someone the other day, who has like history with working in production, and they made a really interesting point that we have managed to build up this multinational industry that deals with borders, that deals with supply chains, that deals with all the complexity of like different resources, and have managed to make it work. Mm-hmm. Why can't we apply that like ingenuity, that that joined up thinking to this side of things? I think, like you say, if it kind of came together, it could happen. Well,
regarding another sort of outdoor adjacent brand, I mean, I guess they're technically an outdoor brand. You went all the way to Peru, I think it was last fall or last summer, to observe Outerknown's Partner for Organic Cotton, and you wrote a piece about it for plasticfree.com.
Yeah.
Looking at Outerknown's website, they do offer secondhand. Kind of like we talked about, it's their own stuff. But did see a couple things actually that I was like, ooh, I actually want one of those shirts. They make great stuff. I do like their products a lot.
It is great.
But quality. For a brand, I mean, they really have rooted their message in sustainable manufacturing. But I didn't really notice, just looking at their website anyway, that they seem to be offering much more than anybody else. I mean, what did you sort of take away about the brand Outerknown during your research for that article?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that outwardly, I do think they look similar to other brands. It looks like a similar offering. And, some of the messaging, I think they say something like, we're the first brand founded on like a total commitment to sustainability. And honestly, like,
good marketing, guys.
Yeah, and when I read a line like that, honestly, it's like, I just think, right, bullshit. And it sort of sets me, and it makes me even more cynical than it already am. But I have to say, I was actually really impressed. So when I went to Peru, I think it was last May now.
Oh God, was it that long ago?
I know, that's how long since we've spoken. So when I went out to Peru, their sort of regenerative organic cotton supply chain. I should probably explain. Should I? I'll probably explain quickly what regenerative organic cotton is. So basically,
that's a good idea.
It goes one further than organic cotton. So it's not just about like cutting out the bad stuff. It's the farmers working in harmony with the land. So like it's a stewardship role, and it's talking about like restoring the soil. It's regenerative. It's regenerating the land literally. So their regenerative organic cotton supply chain was quite new in Peru at the time. So I kind of went to see some different farms, see some factories, and see the kind of cotton production process. And what I found in kind of talking to the team, talking to their partner, Bergman Rivera, who run the cotton side of things, talking to the farmers, is that there does just seem to be like a culture of doing things the right way, basically. So spearheading this project was someone called Dylan Shapelsky. He is the, let me get his title right, Senior Manager of Product Development and R&D at the brand. And in a previous job, he tried to set up an regenerative organic cotton supply chain. And ultimately it failed because there just wasn't that buy-in from the brand. So he then took the idea to Outerknown when he moved over to that company. And the argument is, like, I want to do a thing that no one is asking for, and it's going to cost us loads more money than conventional cotton or organic cotton is going to cost. And they said, okay, yeah, which already I think is great. So they're partnering with this company who, really recommend anyone sort of look into as a model of how development in cotton can be undertaken. So the first Latin American company to be certified under GOTS, third organic cotton producer to become regenerative organic cotton certified. So they're pretty impressive already. And they kind of see that they need to offer their growers security. So they can't just say, okay, you can come to us with one product line and we will promise you an entire crop. That you could pull that product line at any time. So to convince Bergman Rivera, Outerknown basically said, okay, well, we're going to come to Peru, we'll build out an entire product line, build out an entire product plan there, they moved production there, they kind of actually really invested in the region, which I think, is really significant. And the relationship between Outerknown, between Bergman Rivera and the farmers is obviously really quite established. And Orlando Bergman, who's the CEO of Bergman Rivera, mentioned that actually quite a lot of companies do come to Peru and they'll take photos and they'll have, these great conversations, and they'll go and they'll put all these photos on the website and they'll never hear from them again. Whereas, Outerknown, this just isn't the case. They've actually, really invested. And something that kind of really struck me was that it wasn't just like absorbing the cost of the premiums that they have to pay for ROC. It wasn't just like building out that line plan. They're making like investment in infrastructure in the area, so like plumb toilets in nurseries and things like that really count. But they're just not shouting about it. It's just
right.
happening. They're doing it. It's not like they're not blog posts about it or Instagram posts about it or whatever. There are other things that they do. We had hours of questions with them. Like it was quite intense, and they were really open to answering everything. Things like when they hadn't forecasted very well, which is obviously something that needs to be dealt with.
Sure.
They pay to warehouse and store product that they've overbought. They're not landfilling it, they're not burning it, they're not destroying it. And even small things like that, like taking the financial and logistical responsibility for overstock, again, I think is a signal of just kind of doing the right thing. So yeah, I think, outwardly, I did kind of think, well, what are they doing differently? But they are, when I was there, they were on the cusp of doubling their ROC output. And this year, the plan is also to establish a new ROC supply chain in India as well, which, I will be following up on. So yeah, kind of being in it was quite impressive. And, just to say that I don't think brands are our saviors, so I will still be keeping a critical eye on them.
Totally.
Even if a brand does seem to be impressive, I still think we have to kind of hold them to account. But it was really interesting to be in it and to actually, for a change in my career, to see a brand who actually seems invested in doing things the right way it was very refreshing.
Well, I'll be the cynical one then. I'll take that. I'll take that hat from you on this one.
Please do.
It is great. I mean, and look, and we do put the pressure probably too much back on the brands because we want them to solve our problems for us. I mean, that's what Ken Pucker was on a year ago talking about. That was the intent, right? If doing well and doing good can all lead to the higher bottom line, and you should do it. And that has not worked out. Everybody just defaults to the revenue.
Definitely. Yeah.
And what makes me nervous is that Outerknown's been less than 10 years. I'm assuming they're extremely well funded. Because I hear these things and this is exactly what people should be doing. They're they're working within the system. They're making making good choices, not just flooding. Oh, let's just put it out at 60% off to get rid of inventory. How do we handle that? But then it also makes me wonder what's your cash flow like? Because you're selling $130 shirts in a market where I can get another flannel, not as good, obviously, even from a quality fit or anything else, but for $30. So it makes me nervous that, we're going to see we gave it a good run and a year from now, Outerknown isn't around anymore. Just because that tends to be something, unless they hit it big. No, I could be wrong. I don't know their numbers. Maybe they're crushing it. In terms of where they pop up, even on a commercial side, it just seems like they're still pretty small and niche. But that being said, there's still incredible lessons to take away from your experience there. Well, I guess that's a good way to move into another complicated world, which is the world of PFAS, which has kind of become the topic of the hour, so to speak. I imagine kind of everywhere. I mean, it has been for a few years, but the outdoor space specifically. REI and others have vowed to move away from forever chemicals, and brands like Keen are now claiming that they are PFAS free. Outdoor Research, which is another brand based up in Seattle, they were recently touting. I loved this because it's like this is a new development as far as I'm concerned. I saw this in the last week. They're touting their upcoming Spring 24 line as being 80% free of intentionally added PFAS.
Interesting.
Like the intentionally added is okay, that's a new one.
Nice distinction.
Yes, and then being at 100% for fall 24, again, intentionally added. But I think that, because they're adding the intentionally, I think people are realizing that this is a much bigger problem than anybody realized. I think there was a lot of good intentions of like, we really need to get away from these. And then when they kind of dug into it, I think there's a little bit of, it's in everything. So, I mean, has the impact of, is this an outdoor specific thing that people are talking about? Are you hearing about it in other sectors of fashion?
Yeah, it's coming through. I would say that a lot of the coverage dedicated to it that I've seen has definitely been outdoor focused or children's wear focused specifically. And I think children's wear makes sense. It's going to set off alarm bells for parents. Like the links to the health issues are obviously going to make people really conscious about what they're putting their kids in. PFAS has been found in breast milk. It's been found in umbilical cords. Like you say, it's everywhere. So in that sense of kind of like almost like where the panic lies, fashion has got a bit more of a pass, but I would say that's not for a lack of trying on behalf of certain journalists. So a peer of mine called Alden Wicker has written a really great book that I'd recommend to people called To Die For, and it talks about toxic chemicals in fashion and apparel. And I think she's done a really great job of opening up the conversation. So kind of through coverage of her book, the fashion has sort of spread into the conversation. Has spread into fashion. But when you think about how far and sort of how many garments this sort of touches, basically, so nearly 75% of all products labelled stain or water resistant contain PFAS. So I think a reckoning is coming. And then, so in California, a new regulation is coming. So from the 1st of January, they will prohibit the manufacture, sale and distribution of textiles containing PFAS in levels exceeding, I think, 100 parts per million. So that's like deemed as the like tipping point for the safe level. So that I think is going to, sort of potentially get us towards that critical tipping point. There are brands that are, fashion focused brands that are doing PFAS free collections. So like you've had H&M, Zara, Levi's. I think that's really interesting. And you mentioned Keen, and I was doing a bit of research on them a little while ago when I was writing about PFAS, and it reportedly took 4 years and 10,000 hours of work for them to move away from PFAS. So I think that the language distinction, is, again, it's like brings out that cynic in us. But I think at the same time, there are these much more stringent about like greenwashing rules and communication rules. So potentially, because of what you said, like it's literally fucking everywhere. Like you kind of have to say that because it might just be in them without you even putting them in. So but I mean, I think again, it's that it's a drop in the ocean. It's just a start, etc. It's not solving anything, but it's that kind of thing. Like, okay, it's in the conversation. Where do we go from here? Are some kind of bigger entities going to ever commit to like being PFAS free? Throughout their whole lines. I don't know. I'm interested to see where it goes. Again, it's like, as with everything, even the stuff we talked about for like a decade, is kind of still a start.
Well, before we get to your book, I did have an idea that I thought would be kind of fun because you're very plugged into what brands in the fashion space are up to in terms of how they're marketing themselves. So I was like, let's have a segment called This Week in Greenwashing. And I was curious if you had any examples of some brands that are just looking great to consumers, and when in actuality, it's just pure greenwashing. It can be in any category. It doesn't have to be outdoor. Were you able to come up with anything?
I do. I have two fantastic / depressing examples. So in this past week, actually, fast fashion brand Boohoo, who are kind of my arch nemesis. Their headquarters is like a 30-minute bike ride away from my house.
I think you mentioned that to me before, yeah.
So, my favourite brand. So they've basically surprised absolutely no one. They're at the helm of another scandal. So BBC Panorama, I don't know if you have that in the States, but it's like an investigative arm of the BBC. So they found that Boohoo has been putting made in the UK labels on thousands of items that were actually made in South Asia. And in itself, that's quite scandalous. But I think it's extra significant because after another scandal a few years ago, which was about kind of pay and conditions in contractor factories, they opened a quote-unquote manufacturing centre of excellence in Manchester, which was offered supposedly end-to-end garment production in the UK. They made a huge deal out of it. It was like the face of ethical and responsible British manufacturing. And so by kind of putting these labels on, they were giving people the impression that everything had been made under these shiny, new, tip-top conditions when actually, it was made in South Asia within its usual contractor factories, which historically have been plagued with problems. So, yeah, that was an interesting one.
I love when people try to get away with that, typically they do the like designed in, Apple does it, right? Designed in California. It's like, great. Who cares? I could design something anywhere,
right.
And then where are you making it?
Exactly.
But to legitimately put on the label made in.
Right.
When it is not that hard to like peel back, you're a journalist, but you don't think you even need to be a journalist to kind of like, with the internet these days, you can kind of find out just about anything. So I'm sorry, like that was a really big gamble to throw that on there and not think that someone was going to find out.
Yeah, exactly. And they have said, I think we probably have to say this, they have said it's a result of human error, but this is a brand that has an answer for everything. And it's also probably worth noting that the factory, the Centre of Excellence, is actually proposed to close later this year. So Manufacturing Centre of Excellence will be no more.
Yeah. You could tell me it was human error if it was like one SKU, like one size. This is the way these things go on. It was like total error at the factory. They used the wrong one, but that's not how this typically goes. If you have it on multiple styles, it is like that was intentional.
Totally.
So, anyway.
Apparently one in every 250 garments potentially was impacted by this quote unquote human error. So yeah, it's pretty big.
Way to go, Boohoo. What's your second one?
Second one, it's not this week, but I thought it linked really nicely to circularity. So sort of towards the end of last year, Changing Markets Foundation carried out a really, really interesting investigation where they added trackers to clothes that were being sent back via take-back schemes in high street stores. It was in the UK, it was in Belgium, and it was in France. And it was stores like the North Face, Uniqlo, H&M, and Nike. And would you believe, some of the clothes,
I have a feeling I will.
Some of the clothes were being resold as promised. However, some of them were being destroyed. Some of them were lost in limbo, just sitting in shipping containers. Some of them were lost at sea somehow. And a lot of them were also exported to Africa. And we know African countries are already kind of drowning in cast-offs from the global north. So yeah, the take-back schemes, as you know, I think are like a flagship of so many brands' circularity efforts. And then the reality is that the system is actually incredibly flawed, and what you think you're taking back guilt-free could well be destroyed or lost. So yeah, when we're talking about, the first steps of circularity, are those efforts actually meaningful?
Follow through?
Yeah, exactly. We're not seeing that. The systems and the kind of meaningful follow through and the oversight is just not in place.
I don't begrudge it. Look, the system was the system, and it's difficult. This isn't 30, 40 years ago when people were kind of making things up as they went along. They were using factories in different places and shipping out. It is the infrastructure for manufacturing is so well established, and manufacturing at scale, right? Factories, those sort of, like I've said this, probably said it to you. I've said it to other guests. You and I right now could spend an hour. Let's design a few garments. And 10 days we'd have prototypes after our 1 hour call today. Yeah. It is set in stone how stuff pretty much gets made today. So doing anything that is not in that system is really hard. And I don't begrudge any of these big companies who have now they're worth billions of dollars, and we might not like that they are, but they are. And so to change is hard. However, if you're going to, and you're going to make announcements and bring attention to yourself and take all of that good PR, you gotta follow through, or at least run to accountability if you fuck it up along the way. And that's kind of I don't agree. Maybe this was a pure accident, but come on, guys. It's misleading. Just say, hey, we screwed up. We're trying, and then you could get a lot of sympathy for that too, right? Like, well, hey, we're really trying to change things, but this one didn't work out so well. I've publicly said I don't want any outdoor brands to sponsor this podcast because I don't want to be able to lose objectivity or commenting on them. I will backtrack on that for this one thing. Here's a segment, everybody. This Week in Greenwashing with Sophie Benson. Put your money where your mouth is. The Houdinis, the Patagonians of the world, because you can sponsor this segment.
Yes, please.
Because we'll call you out if you're greenwashing.
Definitely, yeah. And I will, believe me.
Heck yeah. All right, so there's a sponsorship opportunity for anyone listening. This Week in Greenwashing with Sophie Benson. So, well, let's talk about your book. How's it going? It's been a few months. Where can people buy it? All that good stuff.
Yeah, so you can buy it from a whole load of outlets. So I don't know if you have Waterstones, but there's Waterstones, Bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, Booktopia.
It's The Sustainable Wardrobe, by the way. I should have mentioned the title of the book. The Sustainable Wardrobe.
Sustainable Wardrobe.
That's important.
Yeah. Whisper, you can also buy it from Amazon, but you can also get it from independent booksellers. And I've also heard that people are ordering it into their local library, which I love. Like, please do that. The idea of my book being in a library. Yeah, amazing. So it's called Sustainable Wardrobe. Obviously, the idea is kind of building a sustainable wardrobe, but basically the idea is that it teaches you everything you need to know to become a sustainable fashion expert. So like you'll learn how clothes are made, you'll learn about fibers, you'll learn about the history of consumerism, you'll learn about waste colonialism, fashion psychology, how to care for your clothes properly. So there's loads of kind of lessons to be learned in there. There's expert interviews, so there's an interview from a garment maker in there, from an expert in microplastics. And something that I really love as well is that there are also practical elements, because I think you sort of, when you get that information about sort of sometimes how bad things are, you kind of think, oh my God, what am I going to do with this energy? So the idea was, well, let me give you an outlet for it. So yeah, there are practical things like there's upcycling projects and repair how-tos. And I guess the aim was just for it to be like accessible. I think it's a book that you can just like dip into, put it down, think about it, take some action, and then come back to it. So I didn't ever want to patronize anyone. There are hard topics in there, but hopefully it's also constructive. I want it to be an active guide, so you come away from it hopefully feeling like you actually know what to do about this, rather than just coming away and being like, oh my God, everything's terrible and I just don't know what to do.
Yeah, look, for the outdoor audience listening to this, it's like a guidebook for how to buy your clothing, and it's like the format is amazing. I kind of expected, we've been talking about having you back on for a while, and, so I got a copy of it. I'm like, okay, I got to make sure I sit and read. And once I started reading it, I'm like, oh, this is just, it is like a guidebook. It is, here are topics, here's informative things. Your library one is a great example. It's definitely one you'd want to check out at the library, maybe make some copies of a few pages, take that home with you. It's the kind of book that you'll feel good marking up in dog-earing pages,
yeah.
It's how, to your point, how to do things rather than feeling helpless. And it's not preachy, it's honest. It's just, here are, for those moments when you're talking about some of the headlines we're talking about and topics we're talking about on this episode, here's what you can do. All right, everybody go buy The Sustainable Wardrobe, Sophie Benson. You can get it from Jeff Bezos. You don't have to, but you can. So it's there if you need to. All right, Sophie, let's make sure it's not so long between appearances here on the Rock Fight.
Yes, please.
For next time.
Yeah.
The fashion world will give us things to talk about, I'm sure.
It will. Let's not leave it another book's writing worth of time between our meetings.
I don't know. You might just start churning them out, though,
Well, you never know. Yeah, let's see.
All right, thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much.
That's the show for today, but before you click us off, please open up whatever app you are listening to this on and give that follow button a little old tap. And if you're feeling extra giving, leave us a review that says, easily the greatest outdoor podcast of our time. Big thanks to my guest, Sophie Benson. Buy your own copy of The Sustainable Wardrobe and see all of Sophie's good work by heading over to sophiebenson.com. We'll be back later this week with more outdoor ideas that aim for your head. The Rock Fight is a production of Rock Fight LLC. I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening, and here to take us out. He just got done with sound check, and he's going to play the Rock Fight fight song just for you. It's Krista Makes. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.
Rock Fight!